What I'm going to talk about today, to round off the Pembrokeshire Day School, is the Dyfed Archaeological Trust's investigations at Porth-y Rhaw Promontory Fort in Pembrokeshire. And it really covers just mostly the work that we did this year, but the work that I'll just briefly skim over and summarise some of the previous work we've done at this Iron Age site. And the two periods of work roughly fall into work we did during the 1990s and work that we have 3 years of investigations that we've done since 2019. And I have to say, all this work has been funded by Cadw, and there were community excavations with several staff and volunteers, and a large team of volunteers. We also have to give thanks to the National Trust, who own the land, for their help, and Pembrokeshire Coast National Park and the Welsh Royal Commission. So this is a distribution map of Iron Age hill forts and other Iron Age promontory forts and enclosed settlements in Wales. And just so you can show you the location of Porth-y Rhaw, which is on the north coast of St Bride's Bay between Solva and St David's, on a beautiful spot. And it's an incredibly dramatic site, and made clear in this aerial photograph with these this promontory of land that has been defended by these multivalent defences, this complex of banks and ditches, defending a promontory extending into the sea, which has subsequently been substantially eroded. As you can see, that middle, if you like, the interior of the fort no longer exists. And we estimate that it was roughly about 4,500 square metres, the interior of the fort. And now all that remains is about 1,000 metres, 1,000 square metres. If I can get this, can't see it, no. On what we call the eastern promontory of the fort, where all the excavations, the majority of the excavations took place. Now, the erosion, the rate of erosion at this site is quite difficult to judge. The erosion along this part of the cliffs of Pembrokeshire doesn't happen in a nice, steady, average erosion similar in all places. It's actually in sort of dramatic cliff falls and slips. I can't say the word. But anyway, what we can tell roughly from following our 1990s work is that on the western side of the eastern promontory, we've lost about 0.5 metre to 1 metre on average of ground, and quite a bit more on the eastern side, which has removed the entrance, the majority of the entrance through the defences. Now, just a quick skim over the excavations carried out in the 1990s over several years. Again, this was funded by Cadw, which took place at the southern end of the eastern promontory and along the western end of that same promontory, and a few sections through one of in a defensive bank. And what it demonstrated was how well preserved some of the archaeology was, and how there were many phases of hut circle. What you can see here are the remnants, what remains of the gullies, the palisade gullies that show the outline of the round wooden huts, round houses. And equally, on the picture on the right, you will see the remnants of the stone footings of a stone roundhouse. Now, the radiocarbon dates from a section cut through the ramparts showed that there was an earlier phase of activity in the early to mid Iron Age. I get this right, I'm always getting these dates wrong. and that material from the stone roundhouse gave an indication that there was activity in the 1st to 4th century AD. So we have, what we're looking at roughly is about 1,000 years of occupation, although that occupation may well not be continuous. And that's just to show you that's where the roundhouse is. And that roundhouse is intact. It's the only complete roundhouse, we think, and it's still visible as an earthwork. So because of this continued threat from coastal erosion, Cadw decided to fund further excavation on this eastern promontory from 2019. And one of the reasons is, if we're not careful, it'll all be lost to the sea. And equally, it becomes just too dangerous to work there. And this is a photograph showing just how dramatic the setting is. And it do look a little bit like we're perched on the edge, but it was quite safe. So in 2019, our priority of a 3-week excavation in the summer was to look at the entrance. And what we found, this is a team recording the entrance after we removed an awful lot of stone, showing the final, if you like, the final phase of entranceway through that inner bank, taking you into the fort. And what survived were these lovely, huge blocks of stone, which was the base of the revetment walls for the entranceway. And what they had done in the last phase of the entrance was to narrow the entrance by inserting another wall where one had, you can see on your right-hand side, they've inserted a new wall when the outer one, an earlier wall, has collapsed on the right, and reset the gate posts. So you had this really good impression, this is looking as though you're leaving the fort, of how impressive the entranceway would have been, with these big stone blocks holding up the banks to the side. Pardon me. A lot of the stone has been lost or plundered after it has gone out of use, but it really gave us an impression of the impressiveness, following it, as you would have progressed through these huge banks and ditches and then coming through this entranceway. So this plan just shows you quickly, the areas that we worked in. The area at the bottom is the entrance, and then there's the trench that you can see with all the little stones in, because it was drawn slightly differently, is the work we did in 2021. And then the big roundhouse that you can see is what we have excavated this year. But going back to 2021, I just want you to, this is just a smaller, much smaller little stone roundhouse that's been excavated out of within and above the very spread remains of that inner defensive bank on the west. So just as you come into the entrance, there's this roundhouse has been created out of that bank. And we think it's quite late. We had very few finds from it, but it's about 6 meters in diameter. We did have a section of quernstone, but what it did have was a lovely entranceway. So this has on the south side of this little roundhouse built into the bank, and it's had this lovely threshold stone, which is a piece of dressed stone that has been reused. It's come from elsewhere, and they've reused it as a threshold stone. But we were talking earlier in our discussion about the personal. And when you think about your own garden and how you reuse anything that you can find to create paths or features within your garden. And this path was made from broken quernstones. And when the person excavating it, everyone loved it so much, because it just felt such, you could just imagine someone having problems with the mud walking into the house and thinking, I've got to find some way of preventing this and laying this path. So again, this was a 3-week excavation we did in 2021. And I have to say, 3 weeks on this type of site goes so fast because we have to do all the deturfing and all the removal of the soils above the archaeology by hand. So it basically takes us 3 days to 4 days to strip the site and 3-4 days to put the site back. And you've just got the period in the middle to do the excavation. So the volunteers working extremely hard. And what you can see over here is just, I don't know if this pointer's working. I don't know. Yes, that is the roundhouse, that stone-footed roundhouse that we saw a bit of in the 1990s trench. And over here is the inner bank. We've had to strip all this stone away, which was compacted across the site. And I'm going to simplify the archaeology here, just to point out that underneath this we found features, always in section. And what was lovely about those is that they're deep features. And on Iron Age sites, such as this, you're often dealing with quite ephemeral archaeology, but these were big, chunky, huge, great big cut into the ground things that you couldn't ignore, packed with stone. And they made us think, oh, we've got quite a lot surviving here, including a lovely little, just in section, a square stone-lined pit with a stone bottom, which was full of what we love to see, black, horrible, unctuous, nasty material. Because a lot of the time we just don't get nice environmentally rich deposits surviving, but this looked quite good. So that is a quick whiz through. But what I'm going to really talk about is, if I can get this to work, you can't see it, but you can see that big roundhouse there. And that is what we excavated in total in 7 weeks. I can't believe we got 7 weeks. 7 weeks excavation funded by Cadw this year. And our hope was that with doing this was probably our last year of work, I suggest, that with the work we've done in the 1990s, the work, these 3 years' work, we will have excavated a large enough area, because to understand these sites, you do need to excavate a large area. We would have some greater understanding of how the history of this site, the people who lived here, what were they doing? So this is the site just after we've removed the turf. And under the turf, across the whole of the site that we've excavated, you find under the turf this sterile clay that seals everything, and you have to just hack it off. And as you hack it off, more and more and more, pressing it, the site starts to emerge. And this is the tumbled stone from the walls of the roundhouse emerging from the clay. And what we also have to do is remove the backfill from the 1990s trench. And I hope you can see, that is clear, that you can see that. There it is, running up there, that's the edge of the trench. And you can see all these stone flags here. And we'll talk about how difficult it is to interpret sites from small areas. And it was that was interpreted as a stone flag floor. And I had this vision of opening this site and having this beautiful roundhouse with this lovely stone flagged floor across the whole roundhouse that would look so wonderful in photographs. But in fact, there was no flag floor at all, and it was just a clay floor. But that didn't matter. I'll talk about why that is later. But so this is the roundhouse as it was when we removed all that clay, and see the entirety of it. And so it's about 12 metres in diameter. The walls are about 1 metre wide, and it has been terraced into the slope. And the material that they've produced from cutting into that slope, they've cut into the slope this side, and they've used the material to lift up this side. It has 2 entrances, a big one here, and a smaller back door over there. And the entrance on this side would have faced you as you came through the entrance of the fort, through the inner bank, through the most of the final bank, the final defensive rampart. So it had been extremely prominent. And it has this lovely entrance stone, which everybody wanted to lift. But I said no. Because no, we left it there. Everyone said, oh, but what might be underneath it, Fran? And I went, nothing, probably. So it's a fine example of its type, to quote Pete Crane. And the entrance, as you can see, we have this lovely entrance stone, and it was quite a splayed entrance, so it narrowed and then widened out. And you can see the two post holes, stone-packed post holes, and we still have some of the door jamb sills surviving. Oops. And just to show you, this is a little reconstruction drawing, I think it's by one of Toby Drivers of the Royal Commission, of a similar roundhouse, stone roundhouse, being excavated by Gwynedd by Gwynedd Archaeological Trust. One that equally is suffering from coastal erosion. And they have a very similar, theirs is slightly bigger at 13 metres in diameter, and but they have the same splayed entrance. And so Ken wonders, is it the same designer moving across Wales, building roundhouses? But the whole, our assumption when we started excavating this was, of course, it was a domestic house. But as we looked at it in more detail, we came to decide, think otherwise. And you can see there's loads of areas. I mean, unfortunately, the site is so dry that they don't show up very well, but lots and lots of areas of intense heat-affected clay. A lot of the stonework of the walls of the roundhouse have been affected by heat, particularly on this southern and eastern side. And what the previous archaeologists had thought in the 90s was a stone-flagged floor was in fact the remains of a drain, a beautiful stone-capped drain that ran around the perimeter, taking water away from the interior, around the outside, and then it came down the west side, came slightly in from the perimeter, dog-legged, and went out through a little inlet, or outlet rather, stone-capped outlet, under the roundhouse wall. It took us quite a long time to work this out, what was going on in this sort of north-west corner, if you like, if there is such a thing of a circular structure. And what we realised was they had enormous problems with drainage over here. And so they continually cut little gullies running from the entrance to take water and then take water out that way. So the drain ran round here, went out there. And what they had to do was they had to keep relaying stone in this area because of water, damp. So harking back to that heat-affected clay floor, what we realised after a while was that what we had was not a house, was not your domestic house. One, it had no central fireplace, which we kept looking for, and it wasn't there. But what it did have was nearly, we think, between roughly around 12 little smithing hearths. And this is one, a really nice little discreet one on the eastern side. And you can see how heat affected the stones are in this area. And we think this roundhouse was used for smithing. And Tim Young from Cardiff University, who's an expert on these matters, came to see the site. And I made the mistake of saying smelting, and he said, no, Fran, not smelting, smithing. They are working the metal. The metal has already been smelted, and they are working in little hearths. And he said, you can imagine them working in front of this quite small hearth and on their knees with a person to the side with a pair of bellows working the heat up in what is a little clay-lined, like a depression of like a bowl-shaped hearth made from clay, and heating it small amounts of metal to produce a small object which they would then beat into shape, take out of the heat, beat in shape by the side of them, replace the heat and beat again. And this one I really liked because this had still the impressions where a crucible may have sat. And we have found sections of crucible, fragments of crucible across the site, and we have found across the site in the past also quite a lot of slag. But nothing to the slag that we found in this site, and in the interior of this roundhouse. So masses of slag, still visible pieces of ironworking within it, and a number of these little pointed objects. Although it doesn't look very much, it's actually quite something to find. We also found evidence of glass waste as well within the interior of the roundhouse. So we're not looking so much at a domestic house as more as a workshop that was actively being used over a long period of time. There are numerous relayings of hearths in particular areas, and they obviously had their spots, which they really liked, which were slightly sort of upslope on the eastern side, which we imagine may well have been much drier, whereas the wet, damp end, nobody worked there, seemed to work there at all. And again, what I really liked was some of the stones, and these stones are actually placed in the ground. They're not just resting on the ground, they're actually dug into the ground. This is the remains of a hearth. And all these stones, which are similar to other hearths, sit very close to the hearth and show the obvious signs of being hammered, pecked, or used probably during the process of smithing. And much of this would be with stone tools. So we had a large number, I don't have any pictures, of hammer stones of all varieties and sizes, some beautiful examples of hammer stones, and polishing and burnishing stones across the site, one of which Luke found on the spoil heap after it had been thrown away, when that was the best one. So it always shows it's worth looking at these things again. But across the site, we also had a lot of Romana British pottery, probably sort of 1st to 4th century. It all needs to be studied, and we haven't carried out any post-excavation yet. But we have lovely little personal finds like a little glass bead, a spindle rail, and what I loved is this rim of a mortarium, which has still got the maker's mark on it. And the best thing about this was just behind the wall of the roundhouse where it had been been terraced into the hillside, just behind the stone. So, as well as this industry that's happening, there's also odds and sods from normal everyday life floating around there as well. So that's the roundhouse in its entirety. But what was going on, equally as interesting, is what was going on the outside. And for Madam Pete did the excavations for a trust, and came down here. He found quite a number of features, but I don't think it's anything like the density of features coming around this side, including what might be an earlier roundhouse with section which has been truncated by this one. We're not entirely jury's out on that one. But what we did have was a huge number of features cut through this ground, truncated by this roundhouse. So the majority of these features are all earlier than this roundhouse, and may well relate much more to the the features that you saw in Pete's excavation. But it's difficult. We've got a long way to go in the interpretation yet. But I've never seen such a density of intercutting features. These are gullies from the palisade gullies, from indicating the defining wooden roundhouses, many phases of them. Enormous range of post holes packed with stone, stake hole features, and this was our earliest feature of the whole site. This long, very straight gully with this butt end. And at the butt end was a large stone, and under that stone was this little deposit of rounded pebbles. And cutting that, if it doesn't make sense, but all I want to show you is the complexity. Was these huge post holes. We had one here, one here, one here, one here, and they themselves are cut by this drain. This drain is cut by this roundhouse. That drain cuts this gully. It just went on and on and on and on. And it's amazing stuff. Not as many finds, I have to say, up this area. Many more inside the roundhouse. And here's my colleague Hubert, my long-suffering colleague Hubert, who's now up for retirement, planning these huge post holes, which have been replaced and recut many, many times. Those are the roundhouse, timber roundhouse gullies. And this is this very strange feature we couldn't make head nor tail of. These huge post holes. They're about getting on for nearly, some of them, a metre deep, packed with stone. Must have bought, to support massive posts. It looks like a bit like an entrance, but an entrance to what? I don't know. Equally as interesting, I keep saying things are interesting, but they are to my mind, is that these features run down towards the north and go under the inner bank. So we cut out a chunk of the inner bank to look at it, which I have to say we didn't understand at all. But what we could tell you is that these features run right under that inner bank and are earlier than that phase of bank. And just here is this feature, which is an entrance to another roundhouse. So much earlier roundhouse. And that's our little square pit fully excavated. I loved that pit. So I have to say, since we stopped excavating, when we finished our excavation, I then went on to work on at Haverfordwest. And so it's not until writing this talk that I've looked at anything since we left site. And I was quite amazed when I looked at it. I thought, oh my goodness, I forget how lovely it all was. But it's such an intensive 7 weeks of just continuous digging, trying to get as much information as we can, because we assumed this was probably going to be our last year, and to take as many samples, get as to log as many finds as we could before what we always have to do on these scheduled monuments, as it is put back as was, is in our agreement with Cadw. So we remodeled the site. We made it, with the agreement of Cadw, look a little bit more prominent, so it would show up a little bit more clearly in the future. And with the agreement of the National Trust and PCMP, and it all has to go back. So all the soil has to go back, all the turf has to go back and netted down, and will still be there for the future. All I can say is that was such a quick whiz through. And I do hope that in the future, when the post-excavation is all being carried out and we've put all this information together and we have dates, we have radiocarbon dates and studies of the pottery and the metallurgy, and we can put all this information together to build a much more precise sequence of how the archaeology, the history of the site, that's what I mean, the history of the site. Sorry, I'm getting my words mixed up. But all I can say is it is physically is a tremendous amount of work, and the people here who have worked on this site will know this. Everything has to be carried up there by hand, everything has to go back down there by hand. Every piece of soil is excavated by hand, and everything has to go back. And the volunteers are an amazing group of people, because they just come every year and dig out the same trench that they opened out the year before sometimes, and then put it all back. So my thanks go to all the volunteers and all the staff who've worked on the project, particularly, I have to say, to my colleague Hubert, who's now retiring, for his amazing plans. And as we always talk, like farmers, archaeologists continue to talk about the weather, that we're happiest in slightly overcast, not too hot weather that allows us to take good photographs. But we work in the heat of July 21 was something else. And also have to say, backfilling always seems to be in the rain. And just to show you that Thomas gets mucky as well. So hopefully one day, when all the post-excavation is done, I'll be able to come back and give you a much more deeper insight into the Porth-y Rhaw Iron Age promontory fort and the whole, and our interpretation of its full history. Thank you.